Vampires. They're everywhere.
You're one of them, aren't you?
No. I'm something else.
That's him!
Blade is the key. All our strengths. None of our weaknesses.
There are worse things out tonight than vampires.
Like what?
Like me. He makes the weapons. I use them. It's open season on all suckheads.
Let's do this.
So that's a clip of Blade, which we are screening at the Movie House Cinemas on Saturday, the 30th of October, as part of the Dark Hedges International Film Festival. And we're going to be using that film as a launch pad for a discussion about representation on screen. I know earlier in the festival we had a discussion about gender equality and talking about representation of LGBT plus community members within the horror genre, but this we're going to be talking about black representation, and I can't talk about that on my own, and I've got an absolutely fantastic international transatlantic panel lined up. I have Vanessa Wright, screenwriter and the festival director at Renegade Film Festival. Vanessa, you were an attendee of one of these panels last year. You were discussing women making horror, so it's absolutely fab to have you back.
Thank you.
And we have Zena Dixon, who is labelled as your best friend who loves horror. Now, Zena, I have a lot of friends, and they all love horror, so I think I could squeeze another person in who loves horror. But do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Vanessa? And not Vanessa. Sorry. Do you want to tell do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, Zena?
Sure. I've been watching horror my whole life. It's always just been something that I absolutely just love. I just adore. Thanks to my mom, huge horror fan. So it's just kind of like a bonding way. It's like our family. We go on family vacation. We're going to watch horror movies. We wake up in the morning, instead of watching the news, we're all going to watch horror movies. So it's just like a family thing, like with my parents, my brothers and sisters. So, but yeah, I decided to start my blog about 10 years ago, just because a majority of my friends, they do not like horror. So I was always everyone's best friend who loves horror. And I love giving horror recommendations. I love bringing people over to the horror side, because I'm a believer. No, I cannot make you watch anything, but I do feel like there's a horror movie for everyone.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I hate people who kind of will say because I was talking to someone recently, like, what's your favorite genre? It's like, I love horror. I love horror for all the kind of wonderful things it can do and how it can bring so many subgenres and so many topics into conversation, which we will be talking about tonight. It's much more than just, a man in a mask chasing a busty woman through the forest. I mean, there's so much more to that in horror, and that's why we have the Dark Hedges International Film Festival. I'm sure, Vanessa, you will say the exact same, that horror is such a massive genre. I mean, you can do so much within the horror genre, and you can make it socially relevant. And I guess we will at some point mention Candyman, both Candyman 2021 and Candyman 1992 during this little panel discussion. But as I said, we started off with a clip of Blade, and I'll come to you first, Zena. I mean, is Blade a film 1998? Stephen Norrington director, David Goyer. I hadn't realised that David Goyer was the screenwriter in that. I'm a big fan of Blade. So where does it rate for you? I know it's more of it's kind of coming exactly to the point we've just made. It's more of an action movie with a bit of horror, but it definitely does. We've got vampires, so we've got a film undoubtedly that's stoked within the horror genre. Are you a fan of Blade?
I am. It's one of my favorite action horror movies. I remember when this movie came out, I was in 6th grade, and I was so obsessed with it. And I was trying to get the teacher to screen it in class, a learning experiment. But she didn't. So, but
I want to know how you kind of try and approach that one. What was the kind of context you were bringing in for we should watch Blade?
Science. We need to learn about blood. So we were learning things. So why can't we learn about Blade?
Yeah,
And
you
at
had me
first
at blood.
right? And at first she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll look into it," because she didn't know what the movie was about, and we could give recommendations. And no, we did not watch that. We ended up watching, I think it was Osmosis Jones, but yeah, it was okay.
I think I'd have preferred to watch Blade.
Me too. She missed out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just want to know, maybe you got your teacher to watch Blade though? Maybe she kind of went off and sought it out and then was like halfway through, it's like, I don't think this is really suitable. I wonder how far she got into watching that film. Did she decide, I don't think this is really going to be suitable for us?
She asked another teacher, and like he just completely blew my spot, and he was just like, "No, have you seen the previews for that?" And it's just like, so I was just sitting there, and I don't know. I mean, I think that if I had the other students on board, we could have watched it, but maybe we could have outvoted her at least, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately just democracy wasn't there that day. But let's not go down. Let's not pull on that thread. Vanessa, what about you? I mean, looking back, are you a fan of Blade and kind of where it sits, the importance, I suppose, where it sits within kind of the comic book lore of comic book movies?
Yeah, I was just like, truth be told, I don't think I've seen it since 1998, so I probably need a good like adult mind viewing of it. But yeah, I mean, I remember when it came out, like there was something very exciting about it. And I think because, it was not just a vampire horror movie, like it was an action film, it's a Marvel comic. So it was kind of blending those two worlds, which I think at that time, I mean, like all the comic book stuff was very superhero. Mm-hmm. So this felt very different. It was kind of fun and refreshing.
Now, I don't know what the ratings over there in the States, but I know here it's an 18. I don't know, would it have been an R when it was released?
Think it was R, yeah.
It was R.
R. It wouldn't have been NC-17. That's the thing I love about R, if I'm correct. An R rating means like a younger viewer can go see it as long as there's an adult. Isn't that the kind of the way it works? NC-17 or whatever it is kind of, it means it's only kind of 18 and above. Which just makes me jealous that I don't live in the States. The amount of horror films I could have persuaded through passive aggressiveness to get my mother or late father to take me to see in the cinema. But this is kind of the reason why we've picked Blade, because I think it's a fantastic film. It's getting a lovely new 4K release, so kind of it was a case of it's available, this shiny new version of the film. Why not screen it back on the big screen? I think it's important, within, as Vanessa, as you alluded to, it's an important film because it was an 18, as I say, when it was out. So it wasn't just like a 12A or 15. It had an edge. It had a bit of grit to it. It had a lot of blood, coming back to what Zena said. And it was a box office smash, and it kind of led the way. Like so many of those films, like the early Bryan Singer X-Men films, and we'll not talk too much about Bryan Singer on this discussion, but it led the way for where we are now with the MCU. I know we are going to have a new version of Blade. I think it's a film. I'm not sure if it's a Disney Plus TV show, but I think it's a new movie. But here's the thing, right? I'm nearly 40. I'm from Northern Ireland. I'm from Northern Ireland here. But when I watched Blade, I never really thought of Blade, and this is going to sound really stupid when I say it out loud, and you're probably going to know exactly what I'm going to say. I never really thought of Blade as a black character. I just thought of Blade as Blade, and that's the thing. And I don't know whether that says more about me, or if that says more that how wonderfully kind of naive I've been. I was never really... I fell in love with the film for what I saw on screen, and it had nothing to do with the colour of Wesley Snipes' skin. Mm-hmm. And I just want to, that's why we wanted to use it. I mean, and I know that's not much of a kind of launch pad for this discussion, but we're talking about representation on screen and its importance. And I mean, just, I suppose, using Blade as the starting point, as a showcase for representation of the black community. I mean, do you see Blade as an important breakthrough feature?
Well, I do. Because when I'm even thinking about it, okay, I know I try to like get my teacher to watch it in class, for the whole class to watch it. But the school that I went to is a very diverse school, and majority of the movies that we would watch, we would never see a character that looked like Blade. Even though back then, because I was like 10, 11, I wasn't thinking about that. I just wanted to see vampires and I wanted to see blood. But looking back on it, we didn't have that like at all. Before that, the only one that I could think of, Spawn, but I don't think it wasn't that I wasn't into Spawn. It was just Spawn felt more like an action movie. And not saying that Blade is an action, because I feel like even with what you said earlier, Jim, that horror can be multiple things. There could be a lot of subgenres within one. So with Blade, the fact that it is an action horror vampire movie, and it's based off of a comic, So I think I understand with what you're saying, but for me, because I'm Black, like you see me, because I am, it's kind of like that's the first thing that I've noticed. And that kind of stands out. And then even because I recently rewatched it probably like a month or so ago, it kind of just adds to him as a character. I feel like, yeah, he's so smooth, and he's just, I don't know, he's just like a really cool guy who just so happens to be a vampire hunter. And before that, again, I'm just thinking about all the vampire type of movies that I've watched before. Yeah, I know we had like Blackula, but Blackula, I mean, obviously he's a vampire, but I don't know, he's clearly different from Blade. I've never seen a character like him before, and he still feels modern and he still feels fresh and relatable, even if you aren't Black, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
I totally agree. Because go on ahead. Sorry, Vanessa.
I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say, I feel like it also it wasn't a trope. In '98, you've got this great, horror film, that is a Black film, and I think prior to that, I mean, it's really hard to count on your hand, like how many of those films were out there that were not, playing into stereotypes and tropes and other things. I mean, even with Blackula, I mean, that still fell into that kind of 70s era of, what they call blaxploitation. And, Blade wasn't that. And I think that's why, and I'm saying this as a white woman, it spoke to so many because it wasn't pandering and it wasn't playing on tropes.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I mean, as I say, I'm just a fan of it. I just think it's an absolutely fab action movie. It has elements of horror in it. There's a couple of little bits. Yes, there's a few elements of CGI that have slightly dated, but how many films from around that area, from kind of even Jurassic Park has its kind of uncanny valley, terrible little odd moments of terrible CGI. I just think it's a fab film, and I guess it's that sense. Coming back to what you said, Zena, was that I guess it's coming back because I suppose we did a big thing within the Banterflix group in the wake of the reemergence of the Black Lives Matter campaign and kind of the events with George Floyd with happened, and we kind of we decided we wanted to learn more, and we kind of with that team we decided to kind of watch more films and kind of look into that. And it's that sense of seeing yourself represented on screen when you don't see yourself, because I know I'm a fan of like Nightmare on Elm Street, the Friday the 13th films, and I'll even throw in, because it's only because we've done a panel about it even recently, even Scream. And the Scream is a film that's only 25 years old. Mm-hmm. And you look at those films, particularly like both Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, it's mostly largely white cast. I think in both
all
Friday
white.
The 13th. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it's not until the third installments do you get to see any characters of color showcasing up. So it's that sense of, if you don't see yourself represented, and as this leads into kind of what Victoria was talking about on our LGBT panel, it's like when you don't see yourself represented, or when you see, I think you made that point, Vanessa, when the color of your skin or your sexuality is a trope, or you fall into a category of the lead's best friend, things like that, because we see that. I think isn't it Scream 2? I think we see that Sydney has a black best friend, and it's there. And I know there's other films are guilty of those cinematic sins, but it's that sense, I guess, of you want to see yourself represented on screen. And as a 40-year-old, near 40, I'm going to be 40 next year, and I seem to be obsessed about it. I'm not really that fussed. I'm genuinely not that fussed. Although I keep saying I'm going to be 40. I'm near 40. It's
going to be great. 40s are
of course it's going to be. 40's the new 30. That's the way. I'm cool with it. I remember when I was 21, it's like, oh, I'm going to be 40 in like 19 years. But no, it's cool. I don't mind. But I've had, for a long, long time, I have seen myself represented on screen. So I've never had those issues. I've never had those kind of felt of kind of, and I don't know. I mean, I always feel uncomfortable when I talk about this, but I guess the more we talk about it and the more I learn, and the more hopefully anyone watching this or listening to this will learn as well, in that sense of that importance of seeing yourself represented. And just coming back on what you said when you mentioned about Blade earlier on, and you were more obsessed about blood and vampires. Was there a time, can you remember kind of a point when you started to think like that or did you have that moment of why don't I see myself represented in these big blockbusters in the horror genre?
It was I think I was like in high school, because around that time, as I previously stated before, like I got into horror because of my mother, and then it was just kind of like a family thing, a way for us all to bond, watching movies. And then when I started to just venture off on my own, picking movies out that I wanted to watch, I would go to video stores. Like with one of my friends in high school, she was actually a huge fan of horror as well. And we would go to the video store. She would pick a movie. I would pick a movie. And mostly it was just horror. I don't really remember. I watched other things, but, just like a lot of people, I'm sure with you guys, you watch other things as well. But, horror is just, that's that first section you go to.
It's mostly horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to the video store, you go straight to the horror section.
Yeah, and then if I didn't buy anything...
Yeah, the video stores have all... Those movies have all the good artwork. They have all the good posters in the front of the pages. They're going to draw you in. Right.
So it was just kind of like I found myself going down that path, just looking then. And then that's when I started to notice kind of what you said, Jim, is kind of like... And what you said, Vanessa, it's kind of like with Black characters, they would have us as tropes. The best friend, the scaredy cat, the old person who knows everything, the person who gives advice, or the Black guy dies first. Or I think it was Dr. Giggles, because I remember watching this movie a long time. It's been a while since I rewatched it, but there's a Black couple in there. And I knew, like, as seeing it I think I was like a preteen, maybe like 13, 14, I watched it. I knew before anything started going down that they were going to be just dead, and that's what happened. So just around that time, I would try to find ones like that. And sometimes I would look up and find some stuff. Like I know there's this movie, it's from the 90s or maybe the early 2000s. It's a full moon feature movie. So it is like a very modest budget called Ragdoll. And the entire cast is a Black cast, but then even kind of like what you said, like growing up, I watched, A Nightmare on Elm Street or Demon Knight, like that one. I love that movie. Or even seeing Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. So I wanted to see more movies like that. Not that there was anything wrong with the other ones. It's just every once in a while, or not even every once in a while, it's just nice just to see someone who looks similar to you. Not that that's a deal breaker for me. I still enjoy watching other movies, like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I just rewatched the Child's Play franchise, so, it's something that I've always just enjoyed. But, now though, obviously there's like a good option for people if you do want to see that, but not even just with Black people, because it's just kind of like, okay, well, what if you're not Black? What if you're biracial? Or what if you're Korean? Or, you know what I mean? So it's just, I'm sure that everyone feels like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
don't
think
know. Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Vanessa. Go on. No, go on ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to speak to that, I think for a long time, it honestly was, at least here in the States, probably a very kind of conditioned way of thinking, and not just in movies and television shows, but commercials and marketing for products. And, you start to be conditioned to see what they consider, I guess, like a typical, insert whatever here, whether it be an American Family or, and I think any of those kind of marginalized, groups were not being represented. And I'm grateful now that we're having these conversations and we are moving toward more inclusion, because to me that is representative of the world we're in. The world is not white and we don't all live in the suburbs. And I think it is extremely important to see that reflected in, movies, TV, books, like, because that's our world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because coming back to what I said earlier on, when you don't see yourself on screen, you don't see yourself represented, you feel alien. You feel, I mean, and I'm saying that sense, and I'd say that broadly, but I guess I'm trying to think, because I was going to mention, just because we mentioned it, I don't know if either of you have seen There's Somebody in Your House, which is just launched on Netflix, which
I haven't seen that one yet.
Which, I don't think it's a fantastic slasher film by any regards. I think the title's a bit weird because there's someone in your house for the first, this is not a spoiler by the way, Vanessa, don't worry, there's someone in your house for like the first 5-10 minutes, and then it opens up into kind of like a Scream kind of pseudo send up. But I was looking at it and we were talking about it and we were reviewing it on our TV show this week, and we were a bit lukewarm about it, and I kind of made the point that at least, whilst I think, and I don't know, Zena, I think I saw you nodding your head. You've seen it too. There's an attempt in that film to showcase diversity. We have a multiply diverse cast. There's characters of openly different of sexuality. I think there's a trans character in there as well. And I know that if in my heart, and I don't know, maybe you'll come at it from a different place, it did feel like a box ticking exercise. It felt a bit kind of Glee-ish. But I have a soft spot for Glee, so that's not a criticism. I do like Glee.
That's fair.
But I still felt that, whilst it might felt like a box ticking exercise, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. At least it's an attempt to tick that box. So many films, and as I come back to, like, when I rewatch Scream, and like as you said, I still love Scream. I still think Scream's a great horror film. But you can still go back and look at things that were released less than 25 years ago, and kind of say to yourself, okay, well, I'm very aware now of that being kind of an all-white cast. There's some of the gender politics, and I know, because we did a Screen panel, that the whole kind of the virginal final girl is a part, and it's an aspect of the narrative within Scream, but there's lines in there like kind of Sydney says, why would Billy want a girlfriend that's sexually anorexic? I just don't think in 2021 you would get away with, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But I guess I'm kind of rambling here and kind of moving to the point. I did start to talk about There's Someone Inside Your House, and I don't know, Zena, I know we're kind of moving from Blade to that, but I had that sense that was a film that was showing a diverse cast. Yes, it felt a little bit like a box ticking exercise, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's at least attempting to tick that box. I don't know what you feel about regarding that. Not saying that racial representation is a box ticking exercise, but I think it's still an important thing to have a filmmaker, producers that are at least willing to showcase diversity.
Right. I see where you're coming through. I guess I never thought about it from that sense, but I'm kind of on the same page with you. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was a pretty cool. It's very straightforward, a very straightforward slasher. And I agree with you. It's literally in the trailer and it's in the title. There's someone in your house, but then, I mean, I think someone might be in the house again, but is it really your house? I don't know. So it's just, you get a little bit confused, but no, overall, I like the movie, and I actually like that the cast is diverse. I didn't feel that they were trying to be forceful with it, because it kind of seemed like those characters actually would be friends, because that's a very small town. Some people, you know what I mean? Like, they seem like they're either really about football and being popular, or then you have the others who's just kind of like, I just want to graduate. You know what I mean? And even with the leading girl, I forgot her name, Sydney something. I know that she is Black and Korean, I believe, because she's in Wish Upon, that came out a couple of years ago. Like, I really like her. I think she's a great actress, but I liked her character. Like, I like that her character isn't perfect. You know, sometimes there is this trope that people will have, you know, when it comes to Black women or like a woman of color, where it's just like, oh, you have to be strong and independent. I didn't really feel like she was strong. Like, clearly she had is that a spoiler? Okay. No. Okay. Spoiler.
It's gonna be fine.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
La, 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 la. No.
But no, I don't feel like they were showcasing that. I like that she seemed a little bit, I don't want to say she seemed a little bit human, where it's just, she's not a robot, like she has feelings. But in a way, I get what you're saying, because there were so many diverse characters. Maybe they wanted to have like some type of a checkbox, but even the way it played out, I don't know. I just kind of like really appreciated it. Like, I didn't really, for myself, I didn't see it going in that direction, which we'll have to talk about. Like, 'cause I feel like I can't really be free without spoiling. And the movie is pretty new, so I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. No, we'll not go into spoiler territory, but I know you haven't seen the film, Vanessa, but as someone who's director of a festival, do you see in the kind of the shorts and features coming through, are you starting to see a trickle of change in terms of the representation on screen? And I know we're kind of talking specifically on this panel on screen, but you know, it's also a very important thing to talk about it off screen as well. And I don't mean that in just kind of from the director point of view.
I was going to bring that up, because as far as that feeling of checking boxes when a story or a film feels forced, you know, I think part of solving that is not only having diversity on screen, you have to have diversity behind the camera as well. Like, I think, you know, you take a story and you've got an entire, you know, above the line crew, an entire film crew that's all straight white people, and you're trying to tell stories that it's going to feel forced, because that's not their experience. And it's really hard to tell stories that are so far outside of your own experience without having people who have experienced that. You know, as far as what I'm seeing coming in, yeah, I am seeing a lot more diverse content come in. I'm also looking for it. Like, I'm actively seeking it out. Whereas, you know, in the beginning, it was just like, let's just see what we get. And I realized my responsibility in that I have to do the work too, you know, and if I'm hearing buzzes of certain filmmakers and certain films, I'm like, well, I want to get my hands on that, because I want to showcase it. I want to give it an audience. You know, and we rebranded. I mean, the whole point of the Renegade Film Festival now is to showcase marginalized voices. So that's across the board. It's not just women filmmakers with us anymore. So, you know, we've really been doing our work to make sure that we are giving a really diverse program.
Yeah, I've had a look at the program and kind of what you do. I think it's fantastic, and I know that. I mean, I was introduced to yourself by Ashlyn Clark virtually. I must admit, you know, through Facebook, and that's why I've been kind of become aware of the festival, and I think it's absolutely fab what you do. I mean, the Dark Edges, we're still very much in our infancy. You know, we've only moved from a short film competition, you know, 2 years ago. You know, last year we had to go completely online. This year has been our first year as a fully fledged festival going into cinemas. And I know as well you were a judge on for our Irish shorts as well. So, you know, now's the time and place, because some might be directors that are watching on this that might not, now's not the time to kind of talk about those. But I do want to kind of move broadly into, because I mentioned, and I guess a lot of people here that are watching this will undoubtedly be aware of, we've had Candyman 2021. For anybody watching who listens to our podcast, We Need to Talk About Movies, will know that I was lukewarm about the film. I felt at the time, I didn't dislike it. I felt there was issues with it. I felt it tried to do a lot. It tried to do a lot, and I mean, I think Nia DaCosta, I think, did an absolutely fab job, and I think it's important to champion Nia DaCosta. You know, yes, Jordan Peele was involved. He's involved as a executive producer and screenwriting capacity as well. But, you know, Nia DaCosta, let's for a minute champion her as a filmmaker. But
yeah.
I did feel, if I'm honest, the using the context and bringing in the Black Lives Matter content and gentrification, which probably, I'll be honest, I mean, I have learnt about that through films, through horror. I mean, I don't know for yourselves, you've probably lived that, you've witnessed that probably more firsthand than any of us, me watching here from Northern Ireland will. But I did feel that the real life horrors and the kind of more fantastical elements of the horror, I never felt that balance fit perfectly. But that was my thing. It didn't get under my skin, and I know I've just mentioned about Champion and Nia DaCosta. It never got under my skin in the way that Us did, in the way that Get Out worked for me, I suppose, as a white viewer, in giving me the kind of the black experience, in that sense that Jordan Peele kind of talked about at the time. This isn't a horror film, this is real life. That sense, that was my issues. But this is the point now when I felt very bad when we did our podcast, when I didn't love Candyman as much as I wanted. Maybe I just hyped it up too much for myself. But I'll come to you, Zena, as my new best friend who loves horror. Tell us about what you thought of Candyman 2021.
So I'm actually one of those people who's in the middle. You know,
okay.
When I first heard about the project, I was so excited about it because thinking about the original Candyman, that movie scared me as a kid, and it still scares me now. I would never in my life, maybe if I don't know, if I need a little razzle dazzle, but I would never in my life say Candyman in the mirror, you know, like it was like that, you know. It's just like, I know it's just like, oh, but you're saying you're the queen of horror. Yeah, well, not with Candyman, you know. Right. So that's
you're the queen,
you
but
don't
you're
fuck
not
with
stupid.
Candyman. Yeah, you're the queen of horror, but you don't fuck with Candyman, and you're not stupid. Yeah, as Vanessa said. You know?
But you know, when I think about that original one, it did have like a lot of messages in there. It did have, obviously the horror was there, the storyline is there, you know. It did touch, you know, on politics. It did touch on a lot of things that make some people uncomfortable. And, you know, watching that as a kid, I didn't see that. But then watching it more, because I watched it throughout the years, you know, of my life, and you just see it more and more. It's blatantly right there. So again, when they first announced this project, I was extremely excited about it. And then even last summer, when they pushed it back to this year, I was like, oh man, I have to wait another year, but it'll be worth it because I want to see it in theaters. So I was excited and seeing the cast. And then the fact that when they announced Nia DaCosta, Black woman, you know, it's just like, I was, again, really excited. So in between that time, because I've never heard of her before they mentioned this project, I went out to find her stuff. So I did check out Little Woods. I checked out, she actually directed a couple of episodes, but there's this British show, I think it might be on Netflix, called Top Boy. And this show is amazing. So she directed a couple of episodes. When it comes to directing, she's flawless. She's amazing. She's on point. But I have to be honest with you, the story for me, it wasn't all there. And not saying that it's a bad story, but again, when I watched the original Candyman, I wasn't expecting to be, you know, like having that, because, okay, when it comes to, as an example, the original Night of the Demons, Kevin Tenney's Night of the Demons from 1988, that movie is my life. When they mentioned that there was going to be a remake, you know, the one in 2008 or 2009, I was like, what? Why? How can you change perfection? You know? So that's how I felt, but I still checked it out. So it's not like I don't feel like I hold Candyman the original Candyman on a certain level. But I will say it scares me to this day as an adult, right? So I went in thinking and feeling like, okay, I'm ready to be scared. You know, I'm ready to be scared. And actually, when I left the theater, just being honest with you, it just made me sad. You know, I watched the movie twice already, and it just makes me feel really sad, just being honest with you. And I'm not trying to sound cheesy, but it's just, you know, when I do watch horror movies, I watch it, you know, I want to be scared. You know, I want a little thrill in my life. But, you know, with the original, well, with the Candyman, with this 2021 version, there's a lot of stuff that felt too real, you know? And I feel like it's a little bit different when it comes to, because you mentioned Get Out. It's a little bit different when it comes to Get Out, because ultimately there's a happy ending. It is different even when it comes to, I'm not saying that this show is not a part of Monkey Paw, not a part of Jordan Peele, but it's different from the Amazon show Them, because there were more supernatural elements mixed in, and it was about this family in the 50s or 60s, and it's just like, I wasn't around back then, so I did not experience that, so I don't know that. But just seeing the stuff that he went through, and there's just so much trauma from the time he was born, and just how things, you know, it just made me feel, just again, just the best way I can just keep on explaining it or just stating it, it just made me feel sad. And that's something that I didn't expect, you know. So it's just like, it may be a while for me to rewatch this movie, but I don't want to say that it's a bad movie, because I don't think that it's bad. And, you know, I don't want to say, oh, I hated it. I don't hate it. It's just like, it just made me feel not so great. And I know sometimes that's what happens. And sometimes we'll watch movies where it's just like, it will break your heart. You know, like I know with the found footage movie, Megan is Missing, that movie ruined my life, you know, when I first watched it. But this one, it just felt different, you know? And again, like I try not to, because I know with, I do have some friends who haven't seen it yet. And a lot of people's been asking me like, hey, what are your thoughts on it? I just always recommend that people check it out at least once for yourselves to see how it makes you feel.
I wonder if that was
I would definitely agree with you. I mean, I think we actually have the same kind of feelings almost towards it, Zine. I mean, I would definitely not say to someone, don't watch it. I would definitely still recommend Candyman. I think the most powerful stuff, coming back on, I think what you mentioned there, like the things that scared me, the things that got under my skin, and I mean, there's different type. I mean, yeah, something can, you know, like we think of the Conjuring movies, they can, you know, jump up, and their composer can make you jump in your seat, and you're jumping in your seat, but you're not scared. A film that gets under your skin and stays there, and you'll find yourself thinking about it. The stuff right. I find myself thinking about Candyman weeks, and still to this day, is like the stuff like the shadow puppetry, the closing credits, the kind of the stuff that goes on, the real world horrors. And I think I maybe went in expecting more supernatural elements, right. But I cut you off, Vanessa, before you even got started. So this is the point that no, it's just because I want to let you come in and share your thoughts then on Candyman.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was gonna say, so I didn't know what to expect. You know, the original Candyman, when it first came out, yeah, it scared the. Can I cuss?
Scared the shit.
Scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, you can swear.
I don't know the rules. I don't want to be bad.
It's all right. That's okay. And then I'll edit out that it's only you that cursed.
But you know, and whether or not it's held up, I mean, it's like I have seen the 1992 version at various times throughout my life, and there are moments now when you watch it and it's a little cringy because you're just like, oh god, you can't do these things, or shouldn't. And so my expectations with the 2021 version is I thought that it was going to be heavy on some social commentary. But I wanted that, you know, I felt like it was going to be a good opportunity to have it be a vessel for a bigger message. So it didn't bother me that it wasn't as scary. I liked that it made me uncomfortable. It made me think. It did make me kind of sad, and it made me like, man, like something's got to change. But you know, I think there's a lot of that, and you know, yes, the credit needs to go to Nia, but you know, Jordan Peele has his hand in this, and you know, there's always going to be some juicy subtext in there, and I definitely it was there. But I think that's one of the things I really like about his work.
I think
the stuff he gets behind.
I think the thing for me was that there was almost too much. There was a lot of kind of bringing in kind of in the wake of the death of George Floyd. Well, let's be honest, the murder of George Floyd. And there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff in the original Candyman, which I think is handled really well, handling over that kind of how that itself has become an urban legend. But there's also kind of commentary on art and the artist as well. So there's a lot of clever things about it. I just think there's almost an attempt. There's too much in Candyman 2021 for me.
It's like too heavy-handed.
I think it's too heavy-handed. I think because I think there's 3, maybe 4 screenwriters involved, and I just wonder if there's too many ideas. There's other things I can talk about. We did a Candyman spoiler. Feel free to listen to that. It's the Dark Ages. We'll plug our own stuff. But we did that, and I think there's as on spoiler as I can say, the cameo of Tony Todd. I think it's lip service to fans. And it's lip service to fans like you, Zena, who was terrified by the first one. But I think it underwhelms its own message, the own subtext of what the Candyman character represents. We are, I know we don't have very long, because I know, Vanessa, you have other things. Well, but Zena, you have other things to do as well. But we have other places to be. But I don't want to spend too much time talking too much specifically about Candyman. As I say, we were talking about representation on screen, and I suppose for yourselves, and I'll come to you first, Zena, what are if you were to say, and I think you might have already suggested a few throughout this panel, but if you were to say to us Northern Irish viewers watching this now, what would be the films that you would recommend that they seek out, and why, if they want to see black representation on horror? I know we've already mentioned the blaxploitation stuff. I have a soft spot for Blackula and all that kind of stuff as well. I'm not sure. I guess with time we could talk about how much importance you put on those particular. I know you've kind of mentioned that earlier on, but those blaxploitation, because they are important in their own sense. Yes, I guess looking back at them now, they are cheesy at times, but they are important nevertheless. I had a crush on Pam Grier, but let's not go there. Let's not pull on that thread with 2 women in the room.
Didn't?
Yeah.
No. Who did not? Yeah. But anyway, sorry. I started to think about Pam Grier there for a second. Sorry, I got distracted. But what would you say, or what would you give our viewers to as a recommended viewing? From our best friend who loves horror, if they want to see representation on screen within the horror genre, what would be the films, Zena, you'd recommend they seek out?
Before I say that, can I say one more thing about Candyman? I know you gave this this beautiful
okay.
It'll be really quick, I promise.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. No, I agree with you, Vanessa, when you said that you felt like there were certain things intentional with that. But I think I'm able to put a nail on the head, coffin type of thing. That was the hammer. Okay. That's the hammer. So what I think it is looking or just thinking about it, story wise, I feel like there were some things where I feel like they didn't take advantage of, they didn't capitalize on for me. So obviously Candyman is scary. And obviously when it comes to what scares you, that's subjective. So there's probably somebody where they're like, oh, well, I thought the movie was scary, which is great, But I think when it comes with the characters, they weren't fully utilized to the potential for me. You have the character, the main character, Anthony, he's going around, and there's a particular thing that obviously, I don't want to spoil it, but can I just say it?
Just go for it. If you haven't seen it, it's your own fault. It's your own fault if you haven't seen it. And if you're going to complain,
mute it for a minute.
If you're going to complain, just go on.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, spoiler. So when Anthony is stung by the bee, and this stuff is happening to his hand, first off, you're cool with that happening with your hand. You don't want to go to the doctor, and then all this stuff. It's then on top of that, with his girlfriend, Brianna, it's kind of her whole world is just from what we know about her, she's a professional woman, right? She works at this art gallery and stuff, and she wants to move up in her career. I liked her. I really like her character a lot, because even when they showed that she went to this one place to talk to this woman about enhancing her career, and that's happened to me before, where it's just like, oh no, since this happened to you in your past, you need to use it so you can capitalize, and that's the only way you'll get the opportunity. So, but they showed her traumatic background, you know, and it was just kind of like, we really didn't get like a closure for that. Sure, we might get one if they do a sequel or something like that, but it was just like, well, why does she have, it's like everyone in this movie, majority of them, they had like a traumatic background, but there was never really any closure. Then on top of that, when all the stuff was happening to him, and it's just like, dude, call your mom, go to your mom. Like, and not saying because she's your mom, but you know this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that's
I don't know.
A totally fair assessment. I would agree.
Yeah.
With
Yeah. And so it's just like, so that was kind of like, and I was like halfway through the movie, but I was still like holding on hope, sitting there in the theater. And I'm like, no, it's gonna, you know, it's coming. And because obviously the kill scenes, even though we didn't see it, and I'm the kind of person where I want to see it, it felt like they were pulling like a Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho, not showing the kill scenes. And I get it, it's very artistic, but it's just like, I want to see it, you know? So it's just like one of those situations. But yeah, I mean, okay, I could go on, but I just wanted to say that real quick.
It's okay. So what you're saying, Zena, is like, and there's a sequence, and you'll both know what I'm talking about. There's a sequence where like the camera's panning out, and you want to be zoom.
Yes. It goes like that, and it's like all the action is happening over there, or it just stays on this one part, and we just see blood splatter on the floor, and it's just like, show me, you know?
Yeah. However, to be fair, I feel like there was one death scene that, even though it was not a close-up, it was done so creatively, and I really loved it. But you know, the building.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about that.
That was an awesome.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say,
really cool stuff with sound.
Yeah.
Like, I really loved when he was walking through the tunnel in the rain, and it would like rush, and then it would stop, and then it would. So there were definitely some really cool creative elements that played with your other senses in that film.
I agree.
And we have totally hijacked your panel talking about
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We'll just talk about Candyman. That's what the people want.
But don't say his name again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, how many times have we said his name now?
Well,
it's all on me.
Crap.
It's all on me. Yeah, I love how you've always let me say that all the time. It's like, yeah, and can I also say one thing after saying let's move away from Candyman 2021 and then bringing it right back? I think it's also ingeniously funny. There's that sequence where they're talking about, and this is playing kind of again with what they talk about in the film. It's like, who would be stupid enough? Who would be stupid enough to say his name? And it's kind of white teenage girls, and you're just like,
yeah, that was funny.
Yeah,
I stand back and I just applaud you. I don't know who came up with that joke. I don't know. I'm gonna give the credit to Nia DaCosta. I just thought that was genius.
Fitting. Like, honestly, I totally see teenage girls doing something like that. You know?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
100%.
We were all teenagers once. You know, we'd like to think we've kind of. Yeah, we've all done dumb stuff. But look, as I say, we said we were going to move away from Candyman. Yeah. We then got. I think I've said his name 5. I've said his name 5 times. So if I'm not seen after this panel, he's going to come get me. It would be a good call. Yeah. It would be a good 4th panel if like there's just it would be perfect timing now if there was like Candyman has joined the meeting in Zoom. But
who knows, Tony Todd? Bring him in.
You know, just get it done. Just get it done. But look, as I said, we were going to move away from that. What would be the examples, Zena, for you for good representations of the black community on screen? And as I said, I've already said, both in front of and behind the camera. I know we've just spent there talking quite a bit about Nia DaCosta, but what would be the films you'd recommend? We've always got the recommended reading list, the recommended viewing list.
Okay. It could be from any year, any time.
You can have whatever you want. You can. Well, I was going to say you could pick as many, but if there's going to be a really, really long list,
oh no,
you could always send me the list, and I can put it up on our socials. You could send me our list, and we could push it up on the site if it's a really long list, or if you come back and decide about 15 more. But just kind of off the top of your head, any year, any kind of whatever you want to kind of go for.
Okay. First one, I'm going to say Sweetheart. from 2019. I know there's a sci-fi element, but we're gonna say it's like a horror sci-fi. Basically, it's about this woman who she's stranded on this island, and there's something on the island with her, and she has to survive. And Kirstie Clemens, I believe that's her name. I may just butcher it, but J.D. Dillard, he directed this movie, and he directed this Blumhouse movie called Slight, which it was more of a, I don't even know what I would call. Okay, anyway, that's going down a rabbit hole. Sweetheart, I feel like Sweetheart, it would be a great movie to check out, and it is available on Netflix because she's just a woman who's trying to survive. You know, she has good days, she has bad days. I mean, can you imagine being stranded on an island? You just have a suitcase, it's not even yours. You have to like build a fire. Like, I have to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have been able to survive the way she did.
Nope. I would die.
Yeah, me too. So it's just kind of like, but she did it. So,
well, it depends whose suitcase you get. You could get really lucky. You could get really lucky if you find it. Like, you could get the person. If say I didn't survive and someone got my suitcase, they're fucked. They're screwed. It's going to be like about. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have Last Exit to Nowhere. If you can get those T-shirts, just an abundance of movie themed T-shirts and maybe some stuff, and that's it. That's pretty much anytime.
I think we share a closet.
Yeah, my lovely wife will verify the fact that pretty much anytime we go anywhere, it's like my usual attire is this one jacket that has to be put on when I'm discussing movies. I don't know why, I'm just weird.
That's so cool.
A little badge, and then the T-shirts, various T-shirts, and maybe some Funko Pops. If I'm coming back from somewhere, I'll have probably bought some Funko Pops. So therefore, whoever gets that suitcase is fucked. I might get lucky, and I might have someone who's got something. You know, I don't know. They've provisions. They have maybe got like a pen knife or something in there, a Swiss Army knife. But no, if he ever gets my suitcase, they're screwed. That's my kind of comedic interlude into that kind of into your very important showcase, Zena. And I've just kind of went there purely for laughs.
No, but you know, I think your T-shirts would have helped her because she needed clothes. You know, then also she needed something to help with the fire. Sorry, she might burn your clothes a little bit, you know. So, but yeah, I feel like that's a great one. And then there's another one from the late 90s called Eve's Bayou. And I know some people will argue and say that's not a horror. Yes, it is. To me, it is. I'm saying it. It is. It's a very much a Southern Gothic horror, and it's not blatantly in your face. It's very much like a drama about this family. It's about trauma. It's about trust. There's some voodoo. There's, you know what I mean, that's going on there. But I love the family. It's a very well-off family. They're not like, you know, oh, help us, we're poor. And, you know, because they always, sometimes with a lot of movies when they're showcasing Black families, especially around that time, it's just like, of course, that you have like some of your issues and stuff like that. But they had like, even with their house is beautiful. The children are well dressed. Everyone is beautiful for some reason in that family. Like, whoa, you know. And the father is well known, played by Samuel L. Jackson. He's a doctor. So throughout the town, yeah, he's possibly cheating on his wife. Who knows? I don't. But I don't want to spoil it. That's why I said that. But he's still a well-known doctor. So the family is very much well off. So I just love the way they showcase the family. And then a last movie that I'm thinking about, I'll go with another one. Well, okay, I'll do two more and then that'll be it. So the last one, well, the first one is going to be Demon Knight, which I mentioned before, you know, Jada Pinkett. Now she's dated Jada Pinkett Smith. She's in it, and Billy Zane. And Tales from the Crypt, like, they're huge. I love them so much. I love their movies. And I love the fact that with her, she wasn't perfect, but as the final girl, because sometimes they'll try to make the final girl be perfect. And, you know, she's a saint, she's a virgin, she does charity on the weekends. But clearly with Geraldine, you know, she did get into some type of trouble. So that's why she was even at that boarding house. But to me, it just showcased that it really doesn't matter where you come from. And sometimes you can't help where you come from, or not saying you can't help what you do, because we all have decisions, but she got herself in a bind And with all, when the demons start coming out and the green goo and their green eyeballs and stuff, she's able to survive. And I just always just love this movie. And then the last one, Spell 2020. So I'm not crazy about like movies, like I don't want to say movies like this one, because I do like this Spell type of movies. This one is very much like a slow burn, and I love the fact that the guy, he didn't have a great relationship. Basically, this man, he did not have a great relationship with his father. His father dies. He decides to go back to go visit him, and he has a family of his own. He has a wife. He has 2 kids, and they live very well off. And he's literally flying a plane to his hometown to go to his father's funeral. But then the plane crashes. This woman who's really into like dark voodoo stuff. There's like dolls. There's like some crazy stuff that goes on in this movie, who pretty much holds him hostage. So it's kind of like Misery, just a little bit, minus you don't have to write a book, but it's just like, I love the fact that with this man, all this horror, first off, he didn't have the best childhood, but he didn't let that define him, or he didn't take it out on his family, on his wife, on his son, on his daughter. So, but yeah, those are my recommendations.
Okay, those are all interesting choices. Vanessa, anything comes to your mind that you would say that kind of you would recommend and throw into the bag in this playlist?
Well, I would recommend, if somebody doesn't know where maybe to start to discover some of these films, there is a phenomenal documentary on Shudder that came out a couple years ago called Horror Noir, and they talk, 90 minutes of just a history of Black representation in horror, and it is a wealth of knowledge in films. You could sit and take notes and watch all the movies. And one of the I think she was a producer, but Ashley Blackwell, who is part of Graveyard Shift Sisters. You can go to their website, and there's actually a great kind of database actually of films. I think they're directed. Most of them are directed by women of color. So those are kind of some good resources if you're not really sure where to start, since we don't have our video stores anymore to go trolling through the shelves.
True.
I know. Memories of many years ago. And I guess that's where the love of horror, as I come back to, I think we made this point earlier on, the horror section just had all the best covers. All the best covers,
True.
Videodrome, all that kind of stuff. Anything with body horror, anything that wonderfully creepy. I'm thinking of like the Nightmare on Elm, even just because I mentioned it, even the Scream cover as well. That was always that's where I wanted to be. That's where I wanted to linger. And then, as I say, I would come up to my lovely mum and dad and go, "Can we rent this?" No. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. See, you had your mum. You said is kind of the big reason for your love of horror. Mine was my grandmother. My grandmother, she loved horror, but she could never watch horror. So I have vivid memories of watching like John Carpenter's The Fog, and anytime anything Gribbly's on screen, she's like, "I'm not watching." And then I knew rightly she would be watching. I knew she would be watching because she would be like, I'm not watching. And I have I know I mentioned in a critical way Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember, this will mean nothing to yourselves having not been in Northern Ireland, but we had a caravan that we would have went to in the summer, so it was about an hour and a half from where I lived in Oma to Clockey. It's about an hour and a half drive, and my grandma, I have a vivid memory of this, lying in the back seat, as you did when you were a young teenager, youngish, maybe about 10, 11, so it wouldn't have been quite teen. Lying stretched out in the back seat of the car. My mum would have been driving, my granny was kind of with her head turned round, and proceeded to tell me from the minute we left our house to the minute we got to the caravan, the entire plot of Nightmare on Elm Street. Literally, like it was like kind of like audiobooks before audiobooks were a thing. And she kind of like, she maybe didn't go into vivid details of everything, the gory details. I'd love to kind of have a memory that good. I can remember exactly what she said. She maybe bridged over kind of the fact he's a child killer. Because let's not forget, Freddy was before he became a pop culture, he was a child killing, child killing paedophile. I think that's without Freddy.
That's
before
what they suggested. He was.
Yeah, but it's okay. We can get his a lunchbox with Freddy's face on it. It's all okay.
Right.
But that's
the
just
only
the
time
joys.
we celebrate pedophiles.
Yes. Yeah, well, let's not pull on that. Let's not pull on that thread.
Let's not do
go
that.
there. Let's not go that because people will complain. And as I say, I will direct all complaints to Xena's website. That's the best way to go on that. I mean, it's
I say
not
it,
one of
but
those.
Xena gets punished.
Yeah, that's the way.
That's
yeah, it's
fair.
like kind of go. Just say anything libelous, anything controversial. People won't like, and just be like, yeah, you can find me at Xena's website. That's the way. That's the way. Yeah. So look, we've talked for just over an hour, and I know we were never going to do that within an hour within a panel for this festival. You know, we were never going to kind of get into. Well, we have got in some big deep conversation. We have got into some conversations and touched on some big conversation points. And I guess, if anything, I kind of hope that this is a starting point for a conversation for people to think about things and to think about what you're watching on screen and that importance. I know I made that point earlier on, and I know if it sounds too cheesy, please tell me. But both of you, please tell me if it's too cheesy. But that sense of the importance of seeing yourself represented on screen, it is an important thing, because the less when you don't see yourself, and I don't mean that, I mean in the colour of your skin, your gender, your sexuality, you make people feel less normal. The more you bring in representation, both in front of and behind both in front of the camera and behind the camera, you normalise everything, and you normalise, and you just kind of that, people are great. That's the thing of all kind of that is getting a bit kind of like, I think we're all going to open a Coke now, a bottle of Coke. It's like, people are great, but that sense, and I know I'm kind of rambling, this is what I do. Anyone who knows the podcast, anyone who's ever met me before will know I will say 20 words when 5 will do. But that sense of that importance, that of normalizing everything, that it just, because when you see things on screen, you're not scared of what you don't see. You get people build up this idea of what things are going to be and what's that going to be. It's like, no, you just normalize everything. I'm rambling anyway. So any kind of parting thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think these conversations need to continue. I think we need to do better as creatives, and I think there just needs to be more happening around this. Like you said, like, this is kind of a starting point. This is a small little corner of a conversation that needs to just get shared and be broadened, and it's crucial. We need it.
I agree. I think it definitely does need to be talked about more. And honestly, if some people do feel uncomfortable with talking about it, sometimes maybe you need to ask yourself why. What makes you feel uncomfortable? Not in a mean way. It's just maybe that's why you need to talk about it more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because I think the sense that I feel, whilst I do still feel that's just me, I do feel self-conscious at times when I talk about these discussions. Mm-hmm. It's that sense that I am just as important as a part of that discussion. The fact that being able to have these discussions and having the confidence to have these discussions and seek out to learn, to want to kind of meet people like yourself, Xena, people like yourself, Vanessa, and have these discussions and not just kind of put it all away and say, oh, well, I'll not, right. I know everything from scrolling through my phone, but by actually talking about it, okay, we're doing it albeit by Zoom on this, but being able to talk about it is a very important thing.
Yeah.
So look, I don't think there's much more really we need to say, because I know we're running out of time, but just last, I know we said at the start, Xena, tell us where people can find lots of your content, which, as I said earlier on, I caught, and it is pretty fab.
Oh, thank you. So I'm always on Twitter, Lovely Xena, and then I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, Real Queen of Horror. And if you want to check out my website, realqueenofhorror.com, feel free to do that. And then I'm also the weekly, I'm a co-host on the weekly Bloody Disgusting podcast.
Okay. And Vanessa, where can people find out more about Renegade Film Festival?
Yeah, they can go directly to the website, renegadefilmfest.com. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I'm always floating around there myself, trying to keep up with everybody. So, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time on this panel. And as I say, thank you for watching. We will have lots more content available on our festival digital player, and as I've already mentioned earlier on, you can seek out on the digital player last year's interview when Vanessa took part in our Women Make Horror panel, which is just as fab as this. Well, probably more fab than this, because Victoria was a much more coherent, less rambly host than I am.